Here we are. All right, perfect. We are live. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We're really excited. And obviously everybody here is too, because we had a tremendous response to this webinar, which makes sense because this webinar, we're going to be digging into some really interesting use cases in the B2B space around search, and we've got a great panel to do that. This panel is poised to talk about not only the business side of it, but the technical side of it. So let's jump right in. I'm going to introduce everybody. I'm going to spend about 2 minutes just giving a little bit of frame up, and then we're going to jump right into the use cases that we shared with all of you. So again, welcome. My esteemed panel, welcome. So let me start. We've got John Murcott with us today. Hey, John, how you doing?
Hey, Jeremy, good. Yeah, you can also refer to me as HawkSearch.com/AI. So if you can see that right under my name, it's more important than my name and my title. Believe me, if you want to talk to us, scan that QR code.
And he is heading up our product and our strategy. So John actually has a great background. He actually in the early 2000s started a company with our CEO Ari Khan called FatWire. It was a content management platform, eventually sold to Oracle. And then I know you spent some time at World Market and then spent some time at WordPress VIP working on some big websites. But John does head up all of our product and strategy. He'll have a lot of great insights in terms of the AI we'll be talking about here. And then we've also got Jonathan Meyer. Jonathan's actually going to be jumping in and showing us specifically, we're going to be pulling up customer websites because that's really where the rubber meets the road. And Jonathan has spent the last 15 years in search, over 10 of those years with HawkSearch. So around here, he's called the voice of HawkSearch. And today he'll be our demo driver. So thanks for being here, Jonathan.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Roy. It's always fun to get on these calls and talk with everyone, and really looking forward to showing off some of the fun use cases we have lined up.
Yeah. And last but not least, Dimitri Khan, not to be mistaken with Ari Khan's last name. Dimitri Khan, thanks for being here. Access Solutions. I know you've spent the last 17 years in e-commerce. You founded and you're the senior architect for solutions engineer for Access Solutions. And I know that like us, you're very much focused on B2B commerce. And I know you spent a lot of time in, digital transformation with manufacturers and distributors, and that's what we'll be looking at today. So thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be here. And I guess I'll take after John. You can call me Mr. B2B Commerce.
Awesome. So we're going to be looking at these 6 use cases, very relevant to manufacturers, distributors, anybody in B2B, because these are business challenges that we hear about every day. So let's jump in. I'm going to take 2 more minutes before we actually jump in and talk about that first one and just talk about how important all of this is. I don't know if you've seen this stat here, but B2B commerce is actually leading over B2C. A lot of folks don't realize that, but B2B commerce is just in an absolute digital transformation. Every conference we go to, we've gone to B2B Online in Chicago. We'll be at Applied AI in Chicago as well later this month. John and I, every conference is really about the transformation that's happening with the e-commerce itself. And we're seeing now B2B companies not only moving online into e-commerce, bringing those product catalogs online, but they're also moving from, only doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% of their revenue online to now 5, 10, 15% of their revenue online. So that's been really exciting to see. So needless to say, AI and Gen AI, are leading the conversation. And these are some really interesting stats around how transformational AI is going to be. You can have this deck. We'll send it to you. Just put a comment in the comment box. I don't want to spend too much time here because I really do want to get to the conversation, but I wanted to share some of these exciting stats just about how incredible AI is. So let's talk about why we're talking about AI and Gen AI specifically. To me, this is fascinating. Of course, I'm sure a lot of folks here are experiencing the same thing. where yesterday, we were all used to just a Google search box and seeing a bunch of results, whereas today we're in ChatGPT, Anthropic, and we're having conversation in that box. And that's what everybody's starting to expect from any search bar on any website. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about here. So what does that mean though for B2B, right? We talked about, we talked about the use cases we're going to look at, but I wanted to break down, specifically where AI and Gen AI are happening when we look at these really complex queries that happen in B2B. Like if you look at that first one, spec-driven equipment, right? You can end up typing some, your customers are typing in some pretty complex search queries, right? And on the back end, in the past, we were simply just doing a keyword, not simply, I mean, there was a lot of complexity, but we were doing a keyword match, right? We were trying to match up all those keywords and trying to produce a result. Well, today it's different. Now we can break that down. We have several different ways that we can look at that query, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. We can use several different aspects of AI, whether it's a large language model or an image model, to determine what exactly is this person typing in and how can we go figure out the best search result. So that's really what we're going to be talking about here. And for us, we have revolutionized our search bar, and we have added several new ways to search. And where it used to be keyword, we can now use AI for concept search. We can use AI for visual image search. We can use Gen AI for conversational search. So, and it's all happening in the search bar, seamless to the customer. And that's been really exciting to see. So I will end on the fact that there's actually three main buckets of AI happening today. There's smart search, which is the search bar itself. That's what I just mentioned, that single unified search where it's not only doing keyword, but concept and image. But then there's also what we call smart response, which is what happens when you get the result back. Can you curate that content? Can you summarize that content? Can you start a conversation? And then last, and we'll certainly, I don't know how much we'll touch on this today, but we'll have webinars coming up, is what we call smart agents. That's the whole agentic piece, AI agents, where you are now, we're talking more on the back end now, right? We're talking more on the merchandiser side. How do we automate? How do we increase productivity? How do we create agents that can go do jobs that perhaps your team can't get to? So that's where we're applying AI and Gen AI, and predominantly we're going to be talking about our smart search and our smart response today. So with that, let's jump in, and Jonathan's going to kick us off.
Yeah, so to that end, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Add that to the stage. We'll remove you and add mine to the stage here. And so we can see now that we're looking at a site called Crescent Electric. They're a really great example of that first pain point that you highlighted there, Jeremy, of difficulties that we see in the B2B space about meeting the customers and the shoppers and the visitors to your site where they are in terms of how they think they should be searching. And it's with that kind of technical specification, really putting in kind of as much attribute-driven data around that product catalog to really zero in on what they're looking for. So as an example here, we're on Crescent Electric. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of quick things here. I'm going to say I'm looking for a 1 foot by 1 foot by 6 inch junction box. That is actually, we'll showcase the spell correction here in a second as well. That would have worked, but just in the interest of providing a clean demonstration here, and we'll say it's a NEMA 3R rating on that. So we're providing specifications in terms of unit of measurements that we're looking to understand. We're providing a specific kind of product that we're looking for, and a rating for that product as well, a classification for that product. Putting in that result here, you can see we're pulling back in 26 results. And what I want to really zero in on is how we're meeting all of those different pieces of data here. 1 foot by 1 foot by 6 inches, you can see that we have translated that into some differences within the data. So HawkSearch natively understands a lot of the unit of measurement searches that we see out there, so that if your product catalog is listing this out as inches, well, that's not a problem if someone searches this on 1 foot. HawkSearch understands that relationship, that 12 inches can mean 1 foot, and understands the dimensional value of this as well, that I'm able to jump back and forth between inches and feet, even though this product is just listed in inches. And also specifically that NEMA 3R here. This is more detailed. This is actually a NEMA 3R product as well, if we look at the product details. But if we scroll further down, we can see other products are clearly calling that out in their product name here as well. So not only are we continuing to match the differences in that unit of measurement searches, we're now here, this is listed not as a foot, but listed in not in inches, not in IN, but in INCHES, finding again all of those products and making sure that we're pulling back in the right set of results, the exact specific 27 results that meet the criteria that the visitor has provided. And again, one of the things that we would stress from the HawkSearch side is really working with the data that you have. We don't want these kinds of projects where we're leveraging AI and we're leveraging machine learning and we're leveraging a lot of the functionality that we have to drive increased relevancy. We don't want those to then be things that require big levels of effort on our clients' ends. So to help demonstrate that very quickly, before I pass it over to Dimitri and John to really discuss this here, I just want to be clear that we have a number of measurement values that HawkSearch just automatically understands. We just need to know basically, are you dealing with products that are in length or that are in milligrams and ounces where we're talking about weight or capacity or current and so on. And then the tool can automatically do these kinds of conversions where we see, okay, you put in 1 foot, well, that can mean 12 inches, as well as the normal relevancy where we look for the product details to make sure that we're really zeroing in on those examples.
I'd say this is huge because from my perspective, as somebody who consulted a lot of businesses in distribution and manufacturing, and we deal with typically a 50,000 SKU catalog is a small one. We're talking hundreds of thousands, if not getting closer or over 1 million SKUs. It's just unmanageable to browse that conventionally, right? If we were browsing an apparel website. So the workarounds are typically either you start searching and then search is really a bottleneck, or you start browsing through categories and then start using the facets on the left, like the filters that we're seeing here. And everything really stops with the quality of those facets, because even the colors, the most simple example, how many colors, like, can't we standardize the number of colors? It's not like we have different ways of spelling them. Well, I see gray spelled differently, or it's black or dark, or dark blue versus navy blue. And this standardization is just a nightmare for anybody who does merchandising and works on the product data. Another problem that we're seeing, product data is typically owned like on the websites by people other than the ones who are actually the product managers and who are experts in the product data. So it creates a tremendous amount of overhead and really impedes the buying journey. The product is there, you just can't find it. So when I first saw this, it was truly like a revelational experience from my perspective, because as a buyer now, I no longer have to really browse. I can type this in and actually not worry even about the string match, inch versus inches versus quote character, because people spell the same thing in so many different ways. And in distribution, I think that's even bigger challenge because you don't own that data. It comes from so many different manufacturers and it's not consistent. So to your point, Jonathan, avoiding the difficulty of standardizing everything and cleaning up the legacy stuff is huge. And to me, as someone who represents the agency, that's where lots of projects stall. We're actually able to go live with imperfect data way quicker.
Yeah, and the nice thing about this is it's just really resilient. So even if we start changing this up and say I'm looking for 12-inch by 1 foot by 6 IN, like if we start going back and forth between this, same kind of idea, junction box, NEMA 3R, it's going to be the same 27 results. So kind of regardless of how those measurement values are being put in, to your point, we really kind of eliminate that as being a stopping point or a roadblock for visitors that are looking for what they're looking for. I think this should be 12 inches. It shouldn't matter that the product catalog says it should be a foot. And really being able to leverage the other pieces of data, like we're talking about with those specifications and those ratings, to make sure that if you're putting in those additional values that tell us more specifically what you're looking for, well, we should return those values as well. So really giving the visitor the ability to search how they think they should search and deliver those relevant results.
Totally.
And I think you even had examples of metric, because that has been interesting, right? With the global trade being in this state of turmoil, metric, like European manufacturers are trying to move into the US market and vice versa. And that's been a problem.
Yeah. And this is actually one of the, I'm glad you brought that up, because this allows us to talk about one of the other things about that conversion that we're showing there. When we're looking at these tables where we're saying, okay, we're talking about length here, and we've been showing examples of inches and feet. Really anything in this table can then be converted again. So that imperial to metric conversion is something that is fully supported within the tool. And we also understand that when we're thinking about this from imperial to metric conversions, those are sometimes not, or more often I should say, not very clean. 1 inch doesn't cleanly resolve into a centimeter. There's usually some decimal points trailing one way or the other. So with our measurement conversion tool, we can even say, well, how far down that decimal point do we want to say these are tolerable matches for that, as well as, of course, providing those exact matches. If someone was to provide those exact conversions, we can, of course, match on those. But we want to make sure that we're, again, meeting our customers where their needs are, which is, hey, if I want to do a search in imperial, we want to make sure that we're finding it in the metric and vice versa. John, I think you were going to say something as well there.
Oh, yeah, I was. And it's so funny because you always want to make sure we name these features correctly, and unit of measure obviously is so important. But what I love about this technology is that it can also be applied to complex SKUs. And how many times, Dimitri, in these crazy catalogs that you're dealing with, where, okay, you told the person, or at least they thought it was some SKU that had a dash, but they were putting in a slash, or rather than the dash, they put in a space and you can't find it. So this framework of matching, technically speaking, you can think of it like a regular expression for people who understand that. Because how many times, Dimitri, have you tried to figure out, well, maybe we could address this with synonyms or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're managing so many different synonyms, this is impossible. So imagine if you understand regular expressions and its power, like that's where you really have a lot of flexibility here.
We'll literally run into the problem of running out of space. Like the system cannot hold that many synonyms. Plus, the human ability to just think of every single one of them, right?
Yep. Yep.
In maintenance, if we're selling basically replacement parts, what happens is you have a unit. Maybe it's a heater or an air conditioning unit that sits outside in the weather, exposed to all the elements, and the part number has corroded over the years. You can't really tell what it is. This is extremely helpful.
Yeah.
And it just gives us flexibility because we can put in really what, again, to that point, corroded, rubbed off. We don't know what that is, so we can do partial matching on these things. CC-20, we're still finding the product that we're looking for. We can put in, of course, the right, if I put in exactly as listed, we'll, of course, find the relevant match there as well. But even being able to just smush those all together as one big string of numbers and letters, we're still finding it, putting in the wrong special characters, maybe put in equal signs and a slash. We're still finding the relevant product there. So again, it's that idea of let's not put up roadblocks for your customers to find what they're looking for. And again, this is something that HawkSearch is doing on our end, to John's point, this technology that we're talking about, where we're able to really understand that measurement conversion can apply to things like this, where we can say, no, we can really break down how someone's going to search in a part number and make sure, again, that we're not putting up roadblocks for them, that they can really get the result they're looking for, kind of regardless of how they're searching for it.
If I could add one more, I know we want to move to the next one, but just one more AI element to this, because Dimitri, one of the aspects you brought up is the color, right? Oh, is it dark? Is it that black? What is it? And you would hope, once again, it could be a synonym, or maybe the LLM understands that, yellow is like this color. And we had a customer where mustard color was an important kind of search term, and it was always breaking and not working. And you would hope, well, yellow, yellow, they knew, but it wasn't always coming up with mustard. However, and Jeremy was talking about this up front, we look at the picture of the product and we get from the embedding the description of it as well. So in some cases, this isn't always going to be the case, but in some cases, looking at the picture of the product, you can get additional insights like what is the color. Even though, so what Jonathan is doing here, you might just try to come up with everything that's, green or green-like. And yes, the LLM will sometimes know the difference, or you may have a synonym, but looking at the picture often will give a huge insight into what you're searching for.
Yeah, so just throwing in some quick examples here where we can say, an emerald shirt. And we don't have emerald as a data point. It is just looking at the images here to say, okay, well, this is close to emerald. This is a green color. This is in that emerald hue as well. This is in that emerald hue as well. And so it bridges that gap that we're talking about there of that color kind of searching, of being able to understand, oh, you're talking about a color that in our data, these might all be referred to as just green, but again, the visitor thinks, oh, this is an emerald color, and they want to search in that terminology. We want to find, again, the right results for that.
As a matter of fact, if I'm an e-commerce director or if I'm a CMO, I would be really excited seeing something like that, because that instantly introduces new ways of shopping on the website. As a matter of fact, I many years ago worked with a merchant who really built their collections. It was retail, built their collections around the concept of color. So everything pink, everything blue. It really took them a lot of time and effort to curate those collections, work on the data points. This is gone. You can literally come up with crazy ideas and roll them out extremely quickly.
Yeah,
definitely. And this, I think, maybe can lead into the next point that we want to kind of tackle here, which is some of that other ways to handle ways that visitor might be searching. So we've been talking about kind of, okay, we're going to be really specific with our example of, here is, you know, these measurements, this classification, this kind of product, or I want to lean into being able to search in a part number, kind of however I might want to, or leverage the data here that we're seeing from an image search. Well, we can take kind of all these different pieces of data and start to roll them into what we refer to as our hybrid search, which allows a visitor to, of course, do those more attribute-heavy driven searches. But this gets into more of leveraging a lot of the AI and the large language models and embedding and vector searching and all that fun stuff to be able to deliver searches that are a little bit more, that are much more, I should say, open-ended and allow for visitors to search the way that they're looking for. So like posing a longer tail question, to say, hey, what would you recommend for keeping a workspace warm during the winter? Putting that kind of a search into a product catalog like this, where it's, really in heavy in electrical distribution kind of space. We've got some blog posts and specification sheets. Be able to put that kind of a search in and having the tool understand what that means and understand the context of that, we're talking about a workspace, so this is going to be something that, we're not looking for necessarily design elements here. It just needs to be functional. We're talking about keeping a workspace warm, and especially during a time frame here of winter. And we're seeing that the results are returning in our forced fan heaters, low profile forced fan wall heaters. So again, it's identifying the request that we've put into the tool here, and then using that large language model, we're able to break that down into an embedding and apply that against the embeddings that we've already built out against the product catalog here. Because again, to go back to some of the other kind of conversations that we've been having, this doesn't require a lift on our client's end. This is taking that existing product data. Here's the name of the product, the image of the product, the descriptions, the attribution, all that kind of technical information, and then running that through that embedding model to build out these kinds of functionalities here. Another fun use case that I like to show off here is just that it really does understand a little bit more of the intent. So doing a search like, I'm looking for lighting options for a warehouse. We're getting back in kind of the industrial looking lighting options, as you would expect. We're saying we're looking for a warehouse. Again, we're not really thinking about style. We're thinking about functionality here. Whereas comparing that to saying, oh, I'm looking for lighting options for just a house, being a little bit more specific there, we can see we're pulling back in much more relevant results for that, keeping in mind that idea of, okay, we're talking about a home. We're talking about a place that we might want to have a little bit of a more of a design or decorative element to it, and leaning really into that image-based response that John was talking about there, being able to say, hey, we can analyze the images here. Obviously, the product detail doesn't tell us anything really about that. This is more stylish than the overhead light bulbs that we had before. But the AI looking at the images is able to say, okay, this is more practical, basically, for a house, and deliver those relevant results for that. And we can even get into more advanced use cases of that, being able to say, let's go with something like, if I say, let's ask for more of a suggestion. I need a portable power source here. One of the fun things that we can do is not only deliver in the relevant results for that. I need a portable power source for a job site. Obviously, we're pulling back in that generator first part of that response. But we can provide other functionalities like being able to drive a smart response, which will give options for, kind of guiding a visitor through. But one of the things I think I'd want to really lean into is that conversational search. So being able to ask questions like that of, I need a portable power source for a job site, pulling back in those responses there, obviously, just like we showed here. But now I can converse with that search. I can say that, what should I be? Let's do this. Let's get it even more complex here. I've pulled back in the product listing. We've also got a lot of blog posts, because HawkSearch can index both content and blogs. Another really important point when thinking about how B2B catalogs are different and unique is that when we're talking about, shopping for dresses and stuff like that, there's typically not a lot of content related to that. When we're thinking about our B2B catalogs, it's, I've got all of these products that have specification sheets and user guides and installation guides and content around that is a very popular kind of thing to improve your site's profile and get visitors coming back. So we can leverage all of that content as well. I can do a conversational search. Say, hey, I was looking for a portable power source. We've pulled back in the relevant kind of products and documentation, but now we can ask, what do I need to look for in a generator? And that'll leverage the content that we have here about, selecting the correct type of generator, which is the better backup power source. It's looking at basically the different results here that generative AI is then able to give us some suggestions based off of that content. Hey, when selecting a generator, here are several important factors. And so we can start to have a dialogue back and forth. I can start to ask questions about specific pieces of content or blog or products. Give me more information. What are the specifications for this particular generator? It really just opens up, again, more avenues for your visitors to kind of search the way that they want to, interact with the results the way that they want to, and really make sure that we're meeting them, again, where they want to search on. And maybe the last little point on this, and I'll pass it over to you. I know I'm kind of throwing a lot out here, but I want to make sure that we're getting a lot of functionality in front of everyone on this call here. In addition to this being one way to, obviously, we can put in just your basic part number searches. We can handle unit of measurements. We can ask questions. We can have a conversation with it. Of course, one of the more powerful ways that we see this kind of functionality being used would be with one of our clients, Pacific Plumbing, who's leveraging our ability to upload an image. So obviously now, if I'm on a desktop device here to drive this webinar here, so it's opening up my local file browser. But if I was on a mobile device, this would obviously let me just take a photo. I could upload a photo from my phone's camera library. But here on a desktop, we're uploading a photo. And I purposely kind of picked this real world example where I might be someone out on a job site. I've got this water heater that I'm looking to replace. And so I've just taken a photo of it. There's other items in here. We've got the door, the doormat. Obviously, there is the water heater itself. And if we open this up, we submit that to the AI search. It's going to analyze that image, look at the product catalog images, and deliver the best result there. And you can see, obviously, the tool has correctly identified that that is a water heater in that. That is the only thing that matches against the product catalog that Pacific Plumbing is offering. And so we're delivering the relevant result there for that. Really zeroing in, again, on that example of, hey, here are the things that match against that. And this gives the visitor the ability to kind of start from a point of view. Maybe I didn't know the exact model that I was looking for. Maybe I didn't know all the specifications. I can take a photo of it, and now we've just refined right into the initial 100 products that the tool thinks, and we can still use our fasting and filtering over here, which is, again, another unique property of HawkSearch that with this AI functionality, we're not throwing away the ability for you to use our fasting and filtering. Again, another way for your visitors to search the way that they want to. Maybe I didn't know what this would be called properly. Let me take a photo and search in it. Now I've got the products that I was looking for.
Goes to Dimitri's example where the SKU was wiped off or was rubbed off the product.
Mm-hmm.
Take a picture of it and find it. Unfortunately, Jonathan, we couldn't see your pop-up of your file system. It's okay, but people know you can find a picture and upload it, or take a picture with your phone.
Exactly.
Well, I got to say that even from personal experience, I'm a DIY guy, and I was fixing a leaky faucet at home, and I couldn't understand the cartridge, that little thing that basically is a valve, what exact one I need. So Home Depot offered me this capability. I just snapped a picture. It found me the right parts, and it was very easy to see which store they're in. If you think about this in the service industries like HVAC, right? Lots of smaller contractors buying from you on a regular basis. And for them, ability to turn around quickly, not wasting time browsing inconveniently, probably on mobile device, or going back to the office, or whatever that is, efficiency, the turnaround time, the reliability of having that product in their hands and moving to more job sites during the day, that's crucial. So this is a massive improvement for the search capabilities.
I'll play off another thing that Dimitri said before, which is we all like the filters on the left-hand side. So we're not here to say that filters on the left-hand side are going away or anything else. But Dimitri was saying, it's like the more you can understand from the request, the less need I per se need to scroll through all of these filters on the left-hand side. And going back to the conversational search, hopefully the search you just did with the visual search, Jonathan, it's like that definitely shows you what you do. The next one, a lot of what drives that conversational search are indeed the facets. That's what the LLM is looking at. So yes, you could still use the facets. If you want to just change stuff, you can. But if the LLM can look and say, oh, you know what, this is one of the most common facets that's used on this page, then why don't I just ask the color? Like, you ask the question, what color would you like it in? Or whatever that facet is. It just simplifies it when you think of conversational search. rather than just say, here's a list of all the facets. Why don't I ask you a question based on the facet that's used the most often? And maybe just one other thing I'll add there too is a lot of times customers think, especially in the B2C world, now getting into the B2B world, is how can I personalize this experience? And I'm sure most of us who have kind of used all this AI technology recently understand what a prompt is. A prompt basically tells the LLM, here's how I want you to converse. I know this is just your demo site, Jonathan. It's very bare bones and expected to be designed and everything else. But imagine a scenario where you can say, well, I have two types of customers. Dimitri, you were talking about, I have small contractors and I have big contractors, or I have do-it-yourself people, working at home, and I have professionals. And you could say different prompts. The prompt for the do-it-yourself is going to be a lot more informal, probably bring up a lot less technical details from the spec sheet or what have you. Whereas if you're a professional buyer, maybe it'll, in that smart response, it's going to go a lot deeper in the technical details or things like that. So it's still the same experience. It's still the same search. Everything remains the same, but just the way that this little experience here, this response experience, is tailored in a personalized way.
And I can even take that idea further, because if in many B2B websites, customers have their accounts, right? Because we have contract pricing, or we have some territorial like warehouses that they're assigned to. So why force them to enter this data, right? We could feed that data into HawkSearch behind the scenes, because we already have enough information about their profile, and that further narrows and personalizes the experience without any effort from the user.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna call an audible here, and let's go ahead and pull up one other site, because you hit on something really crucial that I think we want to highlight here as part of the conversation of how we're kind of HawkSearch is really built around this concept of these B2B common issues that we run into. And you mentioned that idea of warehouse availability, and what can we see based off of, oh, this user's logged in, we know who they are, we know what company they are, we know what their buying habits are. We also know restrictions as a really common pain point that we see in the B2B space. And State Electric is doing a really clear example of this, where if I'm just on their site and I say, oh, I'm looking for some sensors, obviously we're going to drive kind of the full autocomplete. We're pulling back on our search results here. And you can see that we've got back in over 1,000 results for that particular search term for sensors. This is being driven, because I'm not logged in, obviously. This is primarily being driven at this point against the location that I'm at. So this has the kind of the default, starting location is Huntington. If I change my location, and I want to be clear, obviously, the location finder here, this is not HawkSearch. This is coming from their platform. But HawkSearch can leverage this data, just like we could leverage, oh, are you logged in? Are you not logged in? If you are logged in, we know X, Y, and Z about you. This just becomes another data point to say, oh, I'm now from the Cary location. If I do that same search for sensors, we're going to go ahead and get back in very different results based off of that, down to just 527, because there's different product availability at these different warehouses. So understanding, if I was logged in and the tool already knew that I was at the Cary location, I don't need to do anything else beyond put in my search and then get back in the results that I can see personally that are going to be right for me. And crucially, too, we can do a lot of machine learning and automation. So one of the other big benefits of HawkSearch as a tool is that we're not just reliant on manual merchandising efforts. You think about the differences between these two locations. There's 500 products basically that just disappeared because we went from Huntington to Cary. Not only can HawkSearch drive the relevant results for those two different locations, or obviously even more, different examples when we're thinking about, again, logged in versus not logged in, different company profiles. But in this example here, there's more than 500 products that are now just gone because we're at a different location. Well, that means that the visitors are going to interact with these results differently as well, because there's a huge chunk of the catalog that's not visible here. So what's popular, what's selling, what's important to the visitors at Cary versus Huntington is going to be different, and HawkSearch can learn from those signals as well to say, oh, if you're at the Cary location, we know you can't see this whole set of the catalog, but then we also know that you really do prefer the, Acuity brand product line. That people from that location, because they don't have access to this other brand, they then default to another brand here. And so we can learn what is more popular, what sells well, and prioritize those results as well. So that as a marketer, as a merchandiser, someone working with the tool, not only can we support all these complex use cases, but we can also layer in automation so that you're not having to think about, oh, I created that boost rule. That's not going to really help our Cary customers because they don't have access to that catalog. You don't need to worry about it. we're learning, we're improving those results automatically just based off visitors' interactions with the site.
And I think in the current market, we're seeing disruptions. And I was in another webinar lately. About 50% of the attendees, and that was a sizable audience, 50% said that they're seeking new suppliers. So being able to capture the attention and whoever is researching you right now, being able to find the product and like this is my new supplier now, being at the top of the list, it's huge. So, but how do you do that? Of course, you got to have good search, but you also need good data. And with lots of older, I would call them old generation, old school search engines, you have to put a lot of effort. But right now, there is so much going on, right? The pricing changes because of the inflation pressures or the tariffs or the availability of a particular product. And you have to juggle 3 balls. Well, it's better to juggle 2 instead of 3.
Yeah.
So this is one more advantage that I see here.
Definitely. And this is one of those things that I think also speaks to kind of just our familiarity in the space. As Jeremy so politely aged me as being working in the industry for 15 years and working for Hawk for 10. This kind of functionality where we're able to support that segmentation of the audience has been here since I've been a part of the tool since day one. And that just really, I think, speaks to how we've been really looking at the B2B space as a primary driver of functionality for the tool, recognizing that these are the complex use cases that a lot of other search tools can't solve for.
And maybe I'll just wrap up this part here, pulling a couple parts together, because Dimitri, this is a perfect use case where your expertise can come into play. And going back to Jeremy's point in the beginning, which is B2B is moving more and more online. Of course, there's still a lot of offline activity. And a project for one of the sites that we were just looking at before, they took offline transactions just out of the ERP, just the same account, same people, same company. They're doing a lot just on the phone or what have you, but they take that data, put it into HawkSearch, and if you log in as that customer, the boost rules match activity, what you order all the time, that type of thing, from your offline transactions. The reason, Dimitri, why your team would be involved most likely is, guess what? We need to make sure we know who this person is. The ID of the person is the same. In their case, for Crescent Electric, it was the same. They knew the ID of that customer because obviously these things are driven by IDs. So as long as they knew in their ERP that the ID of this customer is 1234, and when they log in, we say it's 1234, then you can have a personalized experience even based on offline transactions.
Which is, I think, still a lot of the transactions happen offline. Plus, we shouldn't discount the legacy buying trends, right? Everything that we have accumulated over the past 10 years. Certainly, the word personalization is used a lot, very liberally. But what does it mean? I think the importance here is, here's the practical application. And it actually does change the conversion a lot, because one more thing I think we're seeing is labor shortages, right? Lots of people in the B2B space, the sales, the estimators, the people who are on site working on those projects and objects, they do start to retire. You hire in the new people who don't have the tribal knowledge. Well, guess what? They sort of do, because they're now working off their predecessors' data points.
Yeah. I know we want to move to the next thing, but Dimitri, I have to play off this too, because sometimes people will say in the B2B space that, look, everyone searches by keyword. They don't ask questions. And yes, a certain, let's say, people of a certain age, that's definitely how they are. But Dimitri, as your point is, guess who these new people are? They're younger. They're used to this more kind of conversational experience. So it is going to start happening more and more that they're expecting to ask a question as opposed to just working backwards from the keywords they assume that your product data is organized by.
And to build off of it even further, it's not even just being able to pose the question, which obviously is a large part of it, but that knowledge, not only does that get carried forward in terms of like a personalization, but we can help plug the gaps where maybe they used the wrong terminology. Maybe they thought it was referred to X way, but in the catalog it was actually referred to as Y way, without them needing to be so specific when posing these more kind of questions, like, again, a portable power source, maybe for whatever reason this person didn't know that's what a generator really would be used for here. We can plug that data, we can plug that gap where, the data never said that the generator is a power source, but it can obviously understand that and deliver the relevant results, and then provide some education as well. Again, with this smart response, looking at the product data to use that generative AI to formulate that response. And I'll also put another kind of point out there, because I think when we start talking about these responses and getting into personalization and some of these kinds of things here, when you're looking at a thing like a smart response, we can sometimes think, okay, well, you always hear about like the hallucinations, or you see like the memes about how the Google AI summary really got something very wrong. The difference between kind of what HawkSearch is doing here for a site like this versus what Google is doing is that Google is looking at the entire internet. They're trying to boil the internet to give you an answer here. We're just looking at the product catalog, and there's guardrails in place there to make sure that it doesn't go out and look at the internet to make suggestions for products that we don't carry or provide answers for things that we don't support. We have those kind of guardrails in place, so you can be very confident that these kinds of functionalities will work for your businesses, will work with your data, and won't suddenly start saying, oh, hey, go shop our competitor because ChatGPT said that was a relevant answer. This is just looking at your product catalog to drive those results. I know there was a few other things that we wanted to touch on here. I know we're running a little bit long here, but I feel like we've got a good flow going. So maybe let's give just a couple of quick examples here. And one we've actually already kind of been showing. I can very quickly kind of touch on this here. We mentioned it in passing about kind of some of the support for different locations and driving the different sets of results. I'd also let you know that as we're talking about these different locations here, HawkSearch is also pulling in real-time inventory and real-time pricing. So that is coming from a different system, but obviously as an integration point, like let's just say I'm looking for like a toggle switch here. We'll go ahead and pull back in, obviously, the results for that toggle switch, but you'll notice if we scroll a bit further down, that real-time pricing call is a secondary call. A very common kind of use case for our B2B clients is to understand the complexity of the pricing and how their catalog needs to support maybe customer-specific pricing, contract-negotiated pricing, pricing that's not available till you log in. We can support all of those different use cases. And as we're seeing here in Crescent, as we're seeing here in State Electric, one of the more common use cases is to integrate with a third-party source, a PIM, an ERP, somewhere that has that data already structured for that real-time pricing, contract negotiated pricing, all of that information. No need for HawkSearch to really store that. You've got that figured out elsewhere. So why make you go through all the effort of getting that data over into HawkSearch and really increasing kind of with the data that we're handling there? We can drive the part that's HawkSearch important here from the relevancy perspective, all the machine learning, all the automation, understanding the part numbers, the unit of measurements, complex question-based searches. Pricing, you've got that sorted elsewhere. Let's just pull that in as part of the response here. So again, just to kind of highlight that, if we're doing these searches here, you can rely on HawkSearch to drive the relevancy, and we can make those additional secondary calls to say, hey, now give me the pricing for that information. Excellent. And very quickly, let's touch on one last piece here, because I do want to make sure that we're kind of hitting everything that we had lined up here. And these are some fun examples here. One of the things that I think is important to stress is when we're thinking about meeting visitors, how they want to search. Invariably, there will come a time where we get to a zero result experience. They put in maybe just some weird combination of things and we didn't get what we were looking for. We didn't have that product line. How do we support that? And I want to give you two fun examples. They're a little less B2B, but I think they really help kind of explain how we can help in this space and different ways of thinking about it. And also highlight kind of how HawkSearch looks at these pieces of data as being more functionality versus really kind of zeroing in on, oh, this is just a B2C feature, or this is just a B2B feature. So here when we're looking at Oriental Trading Company, if we click into their search box here, they're going to be leveraging one of our features that we call Instant Engage, really leveraging kind of some trending information, sales-based information to suggest popular categories and trending products here. But one of the fun things that they're doing here is leveraging this functionality to help avoid, like a zero search result. So if I just put in gibberish here, we're going to go ahead and get to a zero results page, and we're going to say, okay, hey, sorry, we couldn't find what we're looking for. But if you notice, they're leveraging that Instant Engage functionality here again to re-engage the visitor. To say, hey, we didn't find what you were looking for, but here are some options to help you kind of continue down that path. Are you looking for some other popular searches that we've seen, popular categories, and those trending products? Again, a way to re-engage the visitor once they've put in a search that pulled back in no results. And then another fun way that we can leverage this functionality is to just really go wild with our spell correction here. So we'd mentioned earlier in passing that there is spell correct functionality within HawkSearch. We can get really dynamic with that. And Blaine's Farm and Fleet has really kind of taken this to the extreme. in a good way. They are kind of an outdoor, like a Tractor Supply, lots of different categories of products. We're talking about, pet supplies and lawn and garden and home basics and clothing. But if I just really kind of, again, put in some gibberish here and search on that, the spell correction is really trying its best. It's basically looking at that and saying, what is the word that we see first here, really, and trying to deliver a result for that. So I put in this, really kind of gibberish term, but it's picked up that I put it in ANK and is really kind of saying, okay, well, maybe that rest of that was, you touch the keyboard a funny way or something like that. And so it's saying, okay, well, maybe you meant tankless. I can still search for my misspelling if I'd like. But the idea here is instead of getting to hey, we didn't find a match for you, and here's some alternate ways to proceed down, to re-engage with that visitor, let's just really try and match the best that we can to whatever they put in. So this is an extreme example where obviously I put in gibberish and it's found the best match for that. But of course that works for other use cases. If you were to, misspell brand names, like I'm looking for Milwaukee power drill, do something like that. It'll obviously correct for a Milwaukee power drill. Again, two different kind of examples there where we can want to really lean into that spell correction and just kind of show, hey, we can fix for these kind of terms to, again, avoid those zero result experiences. We can really open up that spell correction to make sure that even if someone gets just really crazy, we can try our best to find a match, or we can leverage other functionality. Like, hey, we can still say no results. Here's some other ways to engage that. Maybe pull back in some recommendations, provide suggestions on trending in other popular categories to make sure that visitors, again, don't just get to this point where they're like, you're not finding what I'm looking for. Let me move on to a different site.
This creative autocorrection is actually huge for search by brand, because especially in the industrial world, there's a lot of equipment coming from whether it is Asia or Europe. And for example, spelling Siemens is not necessarily all that straightforward, or Milwaukee. I mean, honestly, I probably cannot spell it correctly if I were that. So,
don't worry about it, Dimitri. Yeah. We got you covered.
We got you covered.
So the importance is that we again, I can totally see somebody getting zero search results. And I've been there because, again, as a DIY guy, I do repair my stuff from time to time, and then realizing, oh my God, it was just one letter thing that was preventing me from making a purchase. It could be huge.
Yeah. And to kind of put a little, maybe put a bow on all this here, because this is another point where HawkSearch is not putting the emphasis or the workload on our clients. We're automating this basically as part of kind of the data that we're getting to say, hey, this is, this is the product name, this is the image, this is the description, here's the sizing, here's all the other kind of data points that we have. We feed those pieces of data into our spell correction. So we're not using kind of just a out of the box English dictionary to translate and do corrections here. We're using the customer's catalog to say, okay, this is the data that you have. So these are the things that we can anticipate visitors are going to be looking for and that they're going to be possibly misspelling. So no one from Farm and Fleet's end here needed to create a relationship to say, oh, well, when they misspell Milwaukee like this, they really mean Milwaukee. No, that was all handled automatically from HawkSearch from our end to say, hey, we see these as data points that we want to correct for. And also handling multiple misspellings as well, not just, oh, there was one word that was misspelled, understanding the intent of the entire search query, even though multiple words were misspelled there. Excellent. I think that was a lot of good information there. It's been a really great conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for joining. It's funny, Dimitri, you mentioned going to HomeDepot.com, right, and expecting a pretty powerful search. But I mean, as you can see, all of that is available to any distributor or manufacturer, right? And I think customers are going to start to expect that from any search bar, that they engage with, is that advanced functionality, and just for it to be a seamless experience. But it's interesting thinking about it from your perspective. There's a lot of tools available to a distributor or manufacturer to compensate for whatever their data looks like, right? For however much resources they have on their side to manage e-commerce, which I think are some of the reasons distributors and manufacturers are sitting back saying, geez, I don't know, this digital transformation, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and my data's not good. And I think, we've touched on some of the things that are potentially holding them back from engaging. But the truth is, there are a lot of tools available to make it work and to move these companies along into their, a strong, digital transformation. So, well, with that, yeah.
Just to add to your point real quick, is I had numerous times conversations with our clients saying, hey, we want this Grainger or Home Depot experience on our website. And when we showed the estimates or the level of effort associated with that, the conversation typically would go like, well, do you have a Grainger or Home Depot budget for building this? And that would end the conversation, but that would also mean that we're not able to seize the opportunity. Well, guess what? Search, again, is probably the dominant way of navigating a B2B website, and enterprise level capabilities are now available at a low level of effort and a very reasonable price. So to me, that's really exciting because now my team can focus on other areas where we can really provide value rather than chasing this dream of Home Depot or Grainger experience on a lean budget, because it's real, it's possible.
Yeah, perfect. That's a perfect way to wrap it up. With that, guys, thanks so much. This was a great conversation. I loved it. A lot of great information. So, and thank you everybody for joining. I know there were some questions, but we kind of ran long, so we can address those offline. So thanks again to you guys for this great discussion, and thanks everybody for joining us. So as you see, we do have an opportunity here. We have a we have a search audit that we can do for you. And if you want to take advantage of that, please do. Other than that, look to our website because we've got more exciting webinars coming up. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. It was great conversation. Thanks.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.